The city of Zephora was burning. Towers that had once gleamed under twin suns now stood in blackened ruins, smoke twisting into the sky like fingers of the dead. Streets were rivers of molten metal and fire, the heat relentless. Aliens of every shape and color ran through the chaos, some screaming, some silent, their faces etched with fear. The war that had consumed this world for decades seemed unstoppable. No one paused to help those who were weak. Among the ruins, a small alien girl struggled. She was slight and frail, her green-tinted skin scorched in places, and one of her legs trapped under a fallen beam. She cried out, but her voice was drowned by explosions and the screams of others. Her own people had already decided she was worthless. No power, no skill, no potential. No one would risk themselves for her. She whimpered as the heat pressed closer, the fire licking around her small form. Then came the sound of boots, human boots, and confident, moving quickly over the rubble. Captain Marcus Reed led a small group of humans into the heart of the destruction. They were a peacekeeping force, sent not to conquer, but to observe, and when possible, save lives. Marcus's eyes were sharp, scanning for danger, but when he heard the girl's cries, he ignored the shouts from his own team. "She's down there. Help me get her," he barked. His team hesitated. The fire was close. Unstable debris hung precariously above them, and flames crept toward the collapsed building where the girl was trapped. "Captain, it's too dangerous. We can't," one of his squad members began, but Marcus was already moving. Marcus ran, ducking under falling beams and stepping over molten pools. Heat burned his arms and face, but he didn't stop. When he reached the fallen structure, he dropped to his knees. The girl's small, terrified eyes looked up at him. "Please, help," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Don't worry," Marcus said, keeping his tone calm. "I've got you." He lifted one end of the beam with all his strength while the girl wriggled free. Smoke and sparks filled the air, but Marcus held her carefully, shielding her from the worst of the heat. His suit's visor reflected flames, yet his movements were deliberate and careful, as if every action had purpose. Finally, he stepped back, carrying her away from the collapsing building. The girl's tiny hands gripped his arm tightly. You saved me," she stammered. "I did what anyone would do," Marcus said, though his eyes scanned for more danger. "You're going to be okay now." The squad moved quickly, forming a protective circle around them as they navigated the streets. Marcus's human medkit was already open, and he began treating the girl's minor burns and cuts with practiced hands. Lyra, the girl, had never known kindness like this. She had been mocked and ignored all her life, and yet here was a human, treating her as though she mattered. By the time they reached a safe zone, alien observers had begun to notice. They were hidden on nearby rooftops and in distant ships, their sensors picking up the humans' actions. Marcus didn't speak to them, didn't acknowledge them. Yet every move he made broadcast a clear message. Bravery and compassion were not weaknesses. As Lyra rested on a stretcher, her injuries stabilized. Marcus looked at her with steady eyes. "You're stronger than you think," he said. "You just haven't seen it yet." The girl blinked at him, unable to fully comprehend the words. Humans were strange creatures, she thought, so different from the cold, calculating aliens she knew. Yet there was honesty in his eyes, a certainty that she had never seen before. Across the city, messages began spreading. Alien media recorded the rescue, some in disbelief. A human had risked his life for a so-called worthless alien child, and there were no hidden motives. No gain, no strategy, no deception, just action. The footage moved quickly from one system to another, faster than any fleet or army could travel. In minutes, whispers became discussions, discussions became debates, and debates began to unsettle the empires themselves. While Marcus and his team escorted Lyra to a human shuttle, the girl began to speak in halting words. "Why? Why did you help me?" "My people, they never cared." Marcus glanced at her, his face firm but gentle. "Because everyone deserves a chance," he replied. "Even if the world tells you otherwise." Lyra's eyes glistened with unshed tears. No one had ever spoken to her like that. She felt something unfamiliar, a spark of hope, feeling she didn't have words for. The shuttle lifted off the planet, leaving smoke and fire behind. Marcus stayed at the controls, scanning the horizon for threats. The alien empires were watching, and he knew they might try to follow, but for now, it accomplished what mattered most. A life had been saved as the shuttle passed through the upper atmosphere. Alien leaders convened in secret. They were powerful, ancient, and ruthless, yet they could not ignore what they saw. A single human had acted in a way none of their warriors would dare. Some whispered of bravery, others of foolishness, but all of them were unsettled. They had been so used to power being shown through violence, through dominance, that a human's courage and mercy felt alien. Back on the shuttle, Lyra rested her head against Marcus's shoulder. Will they come for me?" she asked quietly. Marcus shook his head. "Not if I can help it. You're safe with us." The journey to the neutral space station was tense. Marcus and his team knew that alien scouts might follow, curious or hostile. But they also knew that a human's courage could speak louder than any weapon. Stories of Marcus and Lyra had already spread faster than any fleet. Across multiple empires, debates raged in council chambers. Why would a human risk life for someone so weak? What did it mean about human values? By the time they entered orbit, it became clear that the effect was profound. Even minor skirmishes between alien factions slowed. Soldiers hesitated in their attacks. Commanders paused to reconsider their orders. The ripple of one human's action was causing hesitation across hundreds of systems. Marcus had not intended this, but he understood the power of what he had done. Courage, kindness, and selflessness, values often overlooked, were shifting the course of interstellar events. As Lyra looked out at the stars from the shuttle, she realized something profound. Her life, once considered meaningless, now had importance. Not because of her abilities, but because one human had seen value in her. She squeezed Marcus's hand, silently grateful. Marcus, ever observant, noticed the change in the girl. She would grow into a strong leader, he thought. Not because of her heritage or power, but because she had learned that someone believed in her when no one else did. The human shuttle docked at the station, a hub of neutral activity where humans, aliens, and other species coexisted, at least in uneasy truce. Marcus and his team moved quickly, ensuring Lyra's safety and medical attention. Alien diplomats who had arrived from nearby systems watched closely, taking notes and sending encrypted messages to their homeworlds. Every detail of the rescue was analyzed, every movement scrutinized. Meanwhile, Lyra's own people, those who had scorned her, began to hear reports. Their whispers were tinged with shame and fear. A human had acted where they had failed, had cared where they had not. The message was clear. Strength was not always in power or skill, but sometimes in courage and heart. Marcus stayed with Lyra, ensuring she understood that survival and hope were not gifts to be taken lightly. You survived because you mattered, he told her. And now, you have a chance to make your own mark. The galaxy, though unaware of the full consequences yet, had begun to shift. One life saved, one human action. One girl pulled from fire. These were small acts in a vast universe, yet they had begun a chain reaction that would be felt across empires. Leaders who had once prided themselves on dominance now questioned their own motives. Soldiers trained to conquer paused, contemplating the strange and simple courage of humans. As night fell over the station, Lyra finally rested, her small body exhausted, but her spirit awakened. Marcus looked out at the stars, contemplating the work ahead. The fire on Zephora was not fully out, but hope had been lit. One human had proven that life, compassion, and courage could inspire more than any weapon. The galaxy was watching, and the first whispers of change were beginning, even in the darkness of a galaxy torn by war. A spark had ignited a spark that one human had carried in his heart, and one small, worthless alien girl had carried forward in hers. The story of Marcus and Lyra was only beginning. The galaxy had not yet seen anything like it. News of a human saving a so-called worthless alien girl had spread faster than any fleet or weapon could travel. Across systems, empires paused. Soldiers lowered weapons in confusion. Commanders argued in council chambers, their voices trembling with uncertainty. How could one human's act of courage unsettle centuries of power and pride? On the neutral space station, Lyra slowly began to regain strength. Her burns were healing, and her bruises were fading, but the fear in her eyes remained. She had spent her life being dismissed, ignored, and ridiculed. Yet here she was, alive because of a human who had risked everything. Marcus watched her carefully, noting every twitch and glance. He knew the real danger was not just fire or warships, but the fragile confidence of someone who had never been valued. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," Marcus said softly as he applied a simple bandage to her arm. "You survived. That's the first step. Everything else comes after." Lyra looked up at him, blinking back tears. I've never had anyone say that to me. Not even my family. Not even my teachers. They said I was useless." Marcus shook his head. "No one is useless. Some people just haven't realized it yet, and some people just need someone to show them." The shuttle bay doors opened as alien diplomats arrived. They were a mix of species, shapes, and colors, each more imposing than the last. Yet they all moved carefully, observing Marcus and Lyra. Some whispered to their aides, others sent encrypted messages to their home planets. All of them were curious, unsettled by what they had witnessed. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the ripple of Marcus's actions began to grow. Soldiers and border fleets stopped firing. Alien generals hesitated before giving orders. Minor skirmishes ended in silence. One by one, systems paused, the fear of human unpredictability spreading faster than any traditional weapon. Humans were not known for advanced alien technology, but their courage, their selflessness, and their willingness to act had begun to shift the balance of power. Lyra began to speak more. She told Marcus stories of her life where people had always deemed her weak, her opinions ignored, her potential dismissed. She had been trained to hide, to stay silent, to survive quietly. Marcus listened patiently, never interrupting, never judging. He encouraged her, asking questions, showing genuine interest. Slowly, Lyra began to realize that her voice mattered. "You see," Marcus said one evening, as they watched the stars from the station's observation deck, "sometimes being strong doesn't mean having power or weapons. Strength can be courage, compassion, or just refusing to give up." Lyra nodded, her eyes reflecting the distant lights of the galaxy. "I never thought of it that way. I always believed I had no value." "You have value," Marcus said firmly. "And now, the galaxy is starting to see it too." Back on Zephora, the impact was immediate. Scouts from every empire had observed Marcus's actions, analyzed his strategy, and debated its meaning. Entire fleets halted. Generals reconsidered long-standing conflicts. Leaders who had never known mercy began to question their priorities. The ripple of one human's courage was turning into a wave that no empire could ignore. Some empires sent envoys to the station, requesting meetings with Marcus. Others hesitated, unsure if the human's intentions were pure. But every empire, without exception, began to reassess their approach to war, strength, and honor. Humans, they realized, were unpredictable, but not in the ways they had expected. Humans were not driven solely by conquest or fear. They acted for others, even strangers, even those who seemed weak or powerless. Lyra, now gaining confidence, began to assist Marcus. Her intelligence and quick thinking, previously overlooked, proved invaluable in coordinating relief efforts for civilians still trapped on Zephora. She suggested routes for evacuation, ways to stabilize crumbling structures, and methods to distribute medical supplies efficiently. Marcus listened, impressed by her insight. The girl who had been considered worthless was now proving her worth in ways no one could have imagined. The galaxy watched. Fleet after fleet paused, not out of fear of humans, but out of awe. News channels broadcast footage of Marcus and Lyra coordinating rescues, calming panicked civilians, and facing dangers without hesitation. Alien children saw the videos and whispered about the strange humans who valued life above power. Alien parents wondered if perhaps their teachings of dominance and superiority were flawed. Within hours, even the most powerful empires took notice. Councils convened, debates raged, and orders to attack were delayed. Leaders realized that humans had achieved something no weapon or fleet could: They had inspired respect, fear, and admiration through courage alone. One by one, empires began to lower their banners, not in surrender, but in acknowledgement. Earth was no longer seen as a distant, weak planet. It was seen as a symbol of unpredictable strength. On the station, Marcus observed these developments with quiet satisfaction. He did not seek glory. He had acted out of a simple belief: saving a life was the right thing to do. Yet the consequences were profound. Lyra, standing beside him, had learned a vital lesson about her own worth. Together, they had demonstrated that one act of bravery could echo across the stars. "You see what's happening?" Lyra asked, her voice filled with wonder. They're all stopping, watching, listening. They're changing." Marcus nodded. "Yes, courage is contagious. So is compassion. And humans. We act on both, even when the odds are against us." Lyra smiled faintly. "I want to help more. I want to be part of this. Not just someone being saved." "That's the spirit," Marcus said. "You've learned that your life matters. Now you can show the galaxy why it matters." In the following hours, Lyra assisted Marcus in sending messages of peace and cooperation to every nearby empire. She learned to speak to diplomats, to mediate minor disputes, and to present solutions that emphasized survival and collaboration over conquest. Her voice, once ignored, was now being listened to carefully. Aliens who had once deemed her worthless now realized that she possessed insight they lacked. Marcus's team continued to work tirelessly. Together, humans and Lyra coordinated efforts to evacuate civilians from Zifra's remaining danger zones, distribute medical supplies, and restore critical infrastructure. Their actions were broadcast to every corner of the galaxy, inspiring awe and respect. Alien fleets that had been poised to attack human allies slowed, unsure how to react to a species capable of such courage and ingenuity, as the sun rose over the burning planet. Lyra stood beside Marcus on the shuttle deck, looking out at the horizon. The city below still smoldered, but hope had taken root. I never imagined things could change so fast," she said quietly. Marcus placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes all it takes is one person to make a difference. You've seen that firsthand? Now it's your turn to carry it forward." Across the galaxy, empire after empire paused to reconsider. Soldiers lowered weapons. Generals debated new strategies. Leaders questioned their traditions. The human example had sparked a transformation unlike any before. Courage, compassion, and selflessness had become the new measures of strength. And humans once underestimated were now a standard all others were measured against. Back on the station, Lyra felt a sense of purpose she had never known. She had been called worthless her entire life, but now she was part of something larger than herself. Her actions, guided by Marcus's example, were changing the galaxy in ways she could never have imagined. Marcus watched her carefully. He knew that the true measure of strength was not in weapons or armies, but in the ability to act with integrity, to inspire others, and to value life above all else. One human, one girl, one act of courage had begun a ripple that would echo across generations and systems, as the station's communications buzzed with reports from every corner of Zephora and beyond. Marcus turned to Lyra. "You've done well today. Remember this feeling. It's what makes you strong." Lyra nodded, a smile breaking across her face for the first time. "Thank you. For everything. I'll never forget it." The galaxy had taken notice. Every empire that had once fought without pause now hesitated, reflecting on the strange, quiet courage of humans. One act of selfless bravery had proven more powerful than any weapon, more transformative than any fleet. The universe had begun to kneel, not in submission, but in recognition of a value it had never understood, the human heart. And as Marcus and Lyra prepared for the next mission, neither knew exactly what awaited them. They only knew that together they had ignited a spark that could not be extinguished. The fire of courage had spread, and the galaxy would never be the same. Even the smallest life, even one considered worthless, could change everything. And one human had shown them all how.